Journey to Ironman, Florida, episode 14. Finally, I made it to race day on Saturday, November the 5th, 2022, Panama City Beach, and it was a great day. I finished the race. I had an amazing time. I'm going to talk a bit about how the race went, and I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of somebody who, has been doing endurance sports and middle and long distance triathlon. Now I've been training for this for 3 years, right? And I have certain performance standards and I know what I'm capable of, right? And I was training to try to reach certain time goals. So I'm going to be analyzing the day from that perspective in this video because, during the race and lining up for the race, that was the perspective I took on it. The overall gravity of what I achieved over these past few years hasn't been lost on me, and I need to adopt a different perspective to really speak about that. But it doesn't serve me to talk about that on race day, and think about, oh wow, 5 years ago, I couldn't even run at all. Now here I am doing an Ironman. Like that doesn't help propel me forward and get the best out of me on the day. So that's a conversation for a different day. Some of this might come across as a little hypercritical, but this is what I do. I want to analyze how the race went so I can learn from it and do better in the future. Right? It's part of the process. So just understand that's how I'm going to break this down. The ride up there, we went up there over 2 days, got there on Thursday, checked in, no issues, feeling excited, saw some people that I knew, saw, some friends of mine from Twitter, which was great, got to meet a lot of their families and spouses, and that was such a special part of the experience, especially before the race. Because on race day, having a connection with these people really helped me out a lot. Getting the support from them was great. So, the Thursday and Friday, I got to see my parents, which was awesome that they came down for the race. I rented wheels for the bike, got that taken care of, got my bike checked into transition, got all my gear bags packed. I wasn't feeling too great leading up to the race. I had a long car trip. I just wasn't really feeling my best, but I knew that didn't really matter a whole lot on race day. I'm going to be as ready as I'm going to be. So how I felt on Thursday and Friday didn't matter too much with that, So the race morning came, got down there nice and early. Most of the stuff was set up. I just had to bring my nutrition out to the bike and set that up, and it was an electric atmosphere. Everybody kind of scurrying around down there, and it was a big area, so it was still a little confusing in the dark. But I got down there in time. Saw some more of my friends. That got me energized. A couple people shouted me out for knowing me from social media, and even for watching these videos. So thank you so much for that, everybody, for your support throughout this, because it's been great. I couldn't have done it without that. Got a good warm-up in. I was there in time, did about a 10-minute jog, made it down to the water, and got into the water, swam for probably about 8 minutes. But before the swim start, I timed it really well. I didn't have a lot of downtime before the start of the race, which was great. Sometimes you're just standing there for half an hour, 45 minutes waiting to go, and that could be a challenge. But I avoided all that. Lining up on the beach, the beach at Panama City Beach is incredible. Some of the nicest beaches I've ever seen. So waiting on the sand with all the athletes who were looking to take to the water. Mike Riley was narrating the build up to getting into the water. It was great, and I felt so privileged to be a part of an event like this. This is the highest level of athletic competition that I'm ever gonna compete in, if I'm being realistic, and there are, everybody who lines up for a race like this is a champion, as Mike Riley would say after the race. And 16% of the people who started the race didn't finish it, and another whole bunch who signed up didn't even make it to the start line. So, getting out there and starting the race, and that really is all I can do for preparation standpoint. And then it's about trying to execute my plan as well as I could and making it through the day and trying to get from that start line to the finish line again as quickly as I can. And that's a massive undertaking for an event like this, 140.6 miles total. It doesn't matter how fit you are because things can go wrong. So getting to the finish line of a race like this is an achievement, no matter how experienced and how fit you are. So I started off in the swim. I felt a lot of confidence about this event. I knew I'd finish if I was fortunate enough to avoid any crazy kind of problems with my bike or injuries. I knew I'd finish, and I knew I'd have enough to get over the start line. The swim was great, especially on the first loop. It was 2 loops around the pier. I executed my plan on the swim really well. I was able to do the first loop in about 41 minutes without exerting myself too much on that. Swam really well in the currents and the open water. I'm a qualified open water swimmer at this point, so I knew how to handle myself in those swells and the chop. Got through that first loop, took my time, walked to the start of the second swim loop, catch a little bit of a rest. It was going to be a long day. There's no point in tiring myself out trying to jog on the beach. Just let me walk, let me compose myself, and got back into the water for the second loop. Was not exactly looking forward to doing it again, but I said, let me see if I can beat my time on the first loop, right? And swimming out into the deep water was harder than going across or coming back. So I was not exactly thrilled to have to do that again. But I'm able to swim a long distance at this point without really exerting too much effort. And I executed pretty flawlessly on the swim. The wetsuit was great. I felt great out in the water. I really had a good time. I pretty much met my time goals perfectly. I did the second loop a little faster than the first loop. I think I finished the swim total in like an hour 27 minutes, which, considering the walk in between and stuff, was really right where I expected to do that. So I was very pleased with that. I felt good coming out of the water. It was a long trip up from the swim finish up to transition and then through the changing tent and then out to the bike area. So I had a long trip ahead of me, and I decided I'm just going to walk and I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to enjoy all the encouragement I'm getting from all these people out here, and just really savor the moment, because I got a long bike ride ahead of me. I got a long run ahead of me, so I'm not in a huge rush. I feel I'm better off investing in comfort and just composing myself and preparing myself to execute on the bike what I wanted to do, and I did that, and I really took the time starting here and then really throughout the whole rest of the race, as my energy allowed me to just thank all the volunteers for being out there. There were 1,500 volunteers who helped make this event happen. It couldn't have happened without all them, so I wanted to just express my gratitude for them taking time out of their lives to come and help support this event, and myself and all the other athletes, which was great. I tried to thank all the various police on the course who were helping to keep us safe, and then all the spectators who gave me encouragement out there, because for some, I knew some of them, but most of them I didn't, and these are people out there who are just taking time out of their lives to encourage me and to support me as I do something like this. I'm so grateful for all that. So I did all that as I was headed up to transition, took my time, got changed, got ready to execute on the bike. Got my bike and just set off on the bike course. It was I guess what you would call an easy 112-mile bike course. It was pretty flat. It was one pretty much big long loop, probably like 80 distinct miles through the Florida Panhandle. Not necessarily the most exciting route. Most of the course was open to traffic, which was a little interesting. We don't really do a lot of races that are open to traffic the whole way, where you're sharing the road with these cars, no cones or anything like that. So that got a little dicey at certain points, but I managed that okay. I executed my plan on the bike really well. I took it nice and easy to start. I wanted to gradually build my effort. I experience some leg problems and stuff like that from time to time when I start pushing too hard on the bike. In a shorter race, And if I just hop on the bike and trying to start pedal at 21 miles per hour, I definitely feel some pushback from my legs. My adductor gets a little tender, my hamstring gets a little tender. I dealt with that a little bit, but I just kind of kept going. Got to about the first hour, and so I was about 17 miles per hour, which was a little below where I wanted to be. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna start to exert a little bit more energy, now that I'm feeling good, feeling comfortable on the bike. But it really required a lot of discipline at the start of that race to be patient, because there were a lot of cyclists who were just blowing past me. And, I understand that a lot of the athletes out here are incredible athletes, much more capable than I am. But also, I knew that with the timing, the way I finished the swim, that really most of these really high-quality athletes, the real beasts you see out there, they were all long gone already. They finished the swim before me. They started the swim before me. They finished the swim before me, and they were off on the bike. And I was never gonna see them again until some point in the run. So I knew the people who were passing me. Some of them I'm sure were very capable cyclists and very capable runners. Maybe not like the strongest swimmers, but I knew a lot of them probably just didn't have a great plan, and they were being far too aggressive on the bike. And the worst thing I could do would be to just deviate from my plan and start chasing these people who are strangers when I still have 130 more miles to go on this race. So I stayed patient, and I was really proud that I was able to do that. I executed my nutrition plan pretty well, stayed hydrated well, fueled up at all the aid stations, and I just, made my way through the bike course. I picked up steam as I went. You look at my splits, and they picked up, and I'm grateful that I was able to do that. I never really exerted myself too much on the bike. I think I spent 1 second in heart rate zone 4, but all the rest of it was really kind of a moderate effort for me. And there were a few hills. Got up out of the saddle a few times, stretched the back out, right, and that would become an issue. But for the most part, I felt good on the bike. Obviously, it's a long ride being out there for 112 miles. And then got to about mile 70 where it was a little down and back section, and just turned right into the headwind. And I didn't even realize that going the other way we had a tailwind. It felt like we had a headwind then too, but just start riding right into the wind. And most of the rest of the 42 miles that we had to ride was into a stiff headwind coming off the water there in the Gulf of Mexico right into us. And I knew I had to spend a lot of time in the aero position, because if I didn't, I would pay a stiff penalty in terms of wind resistance and having to work extra hard to make that up, and I'd be going a little slower. So I really tried to commit myself to just stay in the aero position as much as I could. It was pretty comfortable. I did it without a problem. I kept hydrating, getting nutrition in. At one point, I took my socks off on the bike, and my feet were getting sore, so rode barefoot for a while. And after 80 or 90 miles of this, you're just ready, hoping this thing is over. And my really biggest concern for the whole day was a bike mechanical problem, because that's one of those things where you can be the best triathlete in the world, but if your bike breaks, you are not going to finish the race, and you're just going to be sitting out in the middle of nowhere for a few hours, probably waiting for them to pick you up and drive you back. And then all this time, effort, and money you put into this, it's down the drain, and you didn't get to finish really through no fault of your own. So as I got closer to the finish line, my bike held out, and it kept going strong, and I rolled into the transition 2 a little bit slower than I would have planned to do the bike. It was about 6 hours and 17 minutes. I was looking to do it between like 5:30 and 6. Averaged about 17.9 miles per hour. I could have pushed myself harder on the ride, but I didn't want to with the marathon on there. So all in all, I really executed on the bike as well as I planned. It went a little bit slower than I would have hoped, but I can't really complain too much about that. And all things considered, I felt really good going into the run. And, I'm a little tired, obviously, at this point. It was a warm day, about 80 degrees. The sun was shining. So I rolled in. I, again, took my time in transition. I wasn't in a huge rush to get out and get started on the marathon. I wanted to give myself a few minutes to compose myself and, get my gear situated, put my socks on right, tie my shoes. I'm not a professional triathlete trying to qualify for Kona or something like that. So I figured the whole time that comfort was going to be ideal for me. I saw Courtney before I set off on the run, because I said to myself, I'm going to walk through transition. I'm not going to start running until I get to the point where the run course starts, and that's when I'm going to start to try to run and execute on the run the way I had planned. So I got out there, started running, and I felt okay at first, right? The first few miles, I was able to really run without too much difficulty. I think my first mile was like 8:50 pace, which was on the aggressive end of what I think I'd be capable of running this out. Just kind of kept going aid station to aid station. The run course was a down and back twice, down through Panama City Beach, about 6.5 miles. There was an aid station pretty much every mile, so it was an approachable course, because it felt pretty good mentally. Like, all I got to do is go down 6.5 miles and then make it back, and then just do that one more time, and that's not that far. So I knew I could do that, and just get to the aid stations, walk through them, take your time, get the aid I need, get the nutrition that I need and the hydration that I need, because it's going to be a long time out in that run course, and I want to make sure that I'm feeling good enough to finish this strong. The issue that started to arise was I started to deal with a lot of lower back pain. And, if I got to analyze it and say, the cause of that was my less than ideal bike position. I have the road bike with the clip-on aero bars, so it's a compromise in my bike position. I like to get down in the aero position because it makes me go faster. But I'm willing to sacrifice comfort for that, and I've never really had a serious issue with that up until this race. Shorter races and training sessions, I wouldn't have been as committed to the aero position. I knew I'd be able to stay in aero for most of the time. I'm no stranger to it. It was just once I started running, I'd never ridden 112 miles before, and never run a marathon after, and it just, really started to become painful to run. My back was just not feeling good. I started packing the back of my kit with ice at every aid station, and just pouring a cup of ice back there, just walking through the aid station and start running when it ends, and I was doing okay. A little bit slower than I would have liked, but I was able to somewhat comfortably run mile after mile after mile at a decent pace, 10-minute miles or something like that, and I could do that really well based upon my training. And the run course went on. I kept seeing people that I knew out there, which was awesome. Getting some hugs and high fives and encouragement. I kept trying to thank all the volunteers and all the supporters out there, the people who were watching and cheering us on. It meant so much to me to do that. And I felt like if I just kept my energy high through this is really the most important part of this is staying high energy and just dealing with the situation as it's changing. Because I can't do anything about the situation I find myself in right now. All I can do is manage the hand that I've been dealt right in this moment, and do the best that I can to keep advancing toward the finish line and finish the race as quickly as I can. So I made it through the run course, made it through the first half of it with I would say relative ease. I wasn't able to execute exactly the way I'd hoped. I had some GI distress. I had to spend some time in the Porta-Johns. Too much magnesium in my homemade electrolyte mix, and it irritated my stomach a bit. Again, it wasn't something that was new to me, but I hadn't really stressed myself to this level, so I had to take some extra time in order to do that. But I was able to run pretty well and keep running, and just keep getting aid. As the run went on and the second loop, right, running got kind of hard, and it really became a sufferfest, I would say, with my back hurting the way it was. My ankle started acting up, which has been bothering me all year, but that's not a huge problem. I can run on that when it's a little sore and tender. I knew I'd have to do that probably, but the back kept becoming a bigger problem. I would basically just start dumping 3 cups of ice on the back of my tri-kit, and it would numb my lower back probably for the next half mile or so, until it kind of melted and that wore off, and then I'd have to deal with the pain again until I got up to that next aid station, and then just kind of do that again, keep dumping the ice down the back and trying to numb my back out, and just trying to manage this situation as best I could. It didn't really feel like I was in danger of injuring myself permanently or anything like that. It was just some soreness and some pain in there, but it made running really tough. So my ability to kind of keep going got it was stopped, and it wasn't really due to energy levels or aerobic fatigue or anything like that. I had plenty of energy to run. I just my body was failing. It was broken, and it was pure mechanical fatigue on my body. And I got to be a little realistic and compassionate, understanding to myself. I'm 40 years old. I only started taking care of myself a few years ago. So it's hard. Your body is not necessarily built to withstand the pounding of a race like this, and it's a grueling day, and it wasn't up to it at that point. And so the intervals between running and walking, the balance on that kind of began to shift. I made it down to the turnaround on the run for the second time, and I knew I only had about 6.5 miles left. I knew I had plenty of time to do it, a number of hours, and I just tried my best to keep going. I got to mile 22 on the run, and I said pretty much at that point, like, I can't run at this point without suffering a lot. It hurts a lot. I'm not really running that fast. I feel like I'm kind of pushing my body to the limits with what I'm asking of it, but I am able to walk with a purpose, and I'm high energy when I'm walking, and I feel really comfortable and good when I'm walking, swinging the arms out there, and I knew I could walk 4 miles. And so I decided at that point, I'm like, I'm not going to reach these time goals that I had, these really lofty expectations, but I definitely want to meet my goal of finishing this race. So I am just going to walk through the rest of this race, and I'm going to try to enjoy it as much as I can, because here I am competing in an Ironman triathlon, and I'm going to finish it. And I felt great about it. And, if you've ever been to an Ironman, the later stages, it's an ugly scene in a lot of ways, because a lot of the people on the course are in really rough shape, and a lot of those people aren't going to finish the race. 16% of the people didn't finish, and you just see it in these people's eyes that they're not going to finish. So, I had plenty of energy. I felt really good. My heart rate was only like 105 for probably like the last 2 hours. So I didn't really exert myself to anywhere near the capacity that I was trained to. So I felt surprisingly good for being on the back end of an Ironman. So I was trying to give my energy to as many people as I could, trying to offer words of encouragement to the fellow athletes, because at that point it's less of a competition and more of a brotherhood, because you just want to see everybody get over that line, because you know what it takes just to get to that race. And you want to see people reach their dreams. There's enough finishers medals for all of us. And I just tried to help as much as I could. Keep thanking the volunteers and the supporters. I tried to run a few times, but I was like, what am I doing here? I don't need to hurt myself. I don't need to suffer. I've earned this. It doesn't matter so much if I finish in 13 and a half or 14 hours at this point. I'm going to get across the line, and I'm going to have a great moment, and my journey is going to be an overall success. So I enjoyed it, and finally made it to the area where the finish line was, and started running down that finishing chute. It was one of the best feelings of my life. I mean, you hear Mike Riley say, "Matthew Izzo, you are an Ironman," and that's what you do it for. And I made it over the finish line. My time was 14 hours and 18 minutes, which was, longer than I expected to do the race. I didn't expect that I would have to walk that much of the race. If I was reasonably feeling good physically, I wouldn't have had to walk. I could have done that marathon in 4.5, maybe 5 hours at the most, if I was really feeling the way I thought I could have been feeling, but obviously I didn't do that. It did feel like I left quite a bit on the table, because I wasn't able to exert myself to nearly to the point on that run that I planned to. My average heart rate on the run was only like 118 beats per minute, and I had in my mind that I was going to be sprinting down the mile 22, right? With my heart rate at like 155, and my body just couldn't do that at that point. So, no shame in that. I kept battling and really getting through that marathon. If I kind of zoom out and look at it from a different perspective, it's really impressive that I was able to do that. I really kept a positive mindset for most of it. I tried to keep a smile on my face. Only a few times did I stop and say, man, I wish I could stop doing this, or man, it'd be nice if I could just like quit, like maybe it's not worth it. But I pretty much silenced that immediately, and I just kept going and kept a smile on my face, and just tried to spread as much positive energy as I could. Tried to get excited for that finish line. It's when you're in the thick of it and you're seeing people pass you and you're not able to execute a race to the ability that you have, it is a frustrating experience. Even finishing an Ironman, right? I'm not looking at it from the perspective of a 34-year-old guy who was 250 pounds and didn't work out. I'm looking at it from the perspective of who I am now, which is a fairly capable amateur athlete. And I know I can perform up to certain standards. I wasn't able to do that on the day. It does not diminish from the overall achievement in the least, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter how fast I did this triathlon. I achieved my goal, which was great, but I did feel like I left a little on the table. I wasn't able to run anywhere near the extent that I know I can run. So my next race is going to be a marathon, actually, a standalone marathon, which I'm excited about, because I'm looking forward to just getting out there and running and really being able to run like I know I'm capable of based upon how I've been training. So looking forward to that. Unfortunately, on Ironman Florida Day, I did not have that kind of run in me. Lots of learning experiences if I were to ever do another one of these again. But even for other races that I do, knowing I can get through something like this and all the problems I had to encounter, and just keep a positive mindset, keep a smile on my face, and just enjoy the process. And even though there was some suffering, and obviously it's not going to be a great feeling for the entire 14 hours, but just really getting through it and knowing I had more than enough in the tank to do it. So grateful that I was able to achieve that. And I can really nitpick on these little things, and if I were to do it again, I think I could probably do it. Again, 12 and a half hours or so. I had that kind of effort in me if physically my body held up, and I didn't really have to deal with the back problem and those GI issues. But Ironman is a challenging sport, and it's a challenging sport for a reason, because any mistakes you make in that race, especially early on, they will compound as the event goes on. So again, like I said, in a smaller race, I might not have the most comfortable bike position, but I can just grind it out for an hour, 10 minutes in an Olympic triathlon, or even for like 2 hours and 45 minutes in an Ironman 70.3. I can do that and then get off the bike and still run. It's just after 6 hours and 15 minutes or so, it was just too much. And then asking myself to run 26.2 after that, it just ended up being too much. So that mistake kind of compounded. But look, I don't want to frame the whole race day and the whole overall journey based upon that. I put in the work on the day and through the training process to put myself in the position to finish that race rather comfortably, and I'm grateful that I did. And all in all, on the day, most of my problems were caused by poor planning on my part. Potential problems that I understood could be potential problems, I underestimated them. If I had to do it over again, I would handle it a little differently. But on the day, I got to give my effort an A+, because I played the hand I was dealt to the best of my ability. I kept a positive mindset. I kept moving forward. I didn't do perfect, obviously. There were a few things I could have done better. But how could I get upset with myself for, being out there for 14 hours and battling the whole time and getting across the finish line and becoming an Ironman? So that's what this was all about. Race day was really an amazing day. It was a special day. This is obviously the greatest athletic achievement of my life. And there's really nothing else that kind of comes close to that. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to do it. And what an experience it was. So that's pretty much how race day went for me. Afterwards, I actually felt pretty good because I didn't really exert myself, for those last 2 hours. It was really a pretty comfortable walk. So I made it across the finish line. I was happy to stop. Don't get me wrong. I was thrilled that I didn't have to keep going anymore. But if they would have moved that finish line 5 miles further, I could have kept walking and I would have made it. I would have been happy about it. But, I still had plenty of gas in the tank by the end of that race. So it was great. And my preparations were enough to get me to that point. Just wasn't really able to execute my plan. I'd say after 130 miles, I wasn't able to really execute what I had planned to do for those last, I'd say, third of the run. So no shame in that whatsoever. Again, demanding, challenging sport, and the people who do this well are incredible athletes, and just the perseverance and dedication they show is amazing. And I consider myself privileged to have joined that club and to now be an Ironman.